What was going through your head at the moment when they were announcing?
You know, I think I was just really honored to be in the top 2. I was like, whatever happens, happens. And then Terry says my name and I'm like, what is happening right now?
She went from a TV breakout teen with a voice that could rattle rafters to a 30-year-old architect of her own legend. And the way she now lives, trains, travels, and decides what the world gets to hear is nothing like the tabloid fantasy. It is smarter, quieter, and far more powerful than anyone expects.
Everything's been moving so fast. I haven't had any downtime to really digest it, but I have been getting bombarded with text and calls, and I just have not touched my phone yet because I don't think I'm mentally ready.
So if the applause is only the surface, what really happens when Jessica Sanchez closes the door and chooses how her life will sound next? From spotlight to strategy. The public story starts with lights, live bands, and standing ovations. But the private story begins the morning after, when the cameras leave and the choices get real. Jessica Sanchez learned that difference fast. At 19, she found out that momentum is borrowed and ownership is built. So she treated her breakout not as a destination, but as a doorway. While other young singers chased the quick sugar rush of another viral cover, she chased competence. She sat with writers who cared about structure and metaphor more than trends, learned to protect masters and splits instead of handing them to strangers, and began thinking like a producer who happens to sing rather than a singer who waits for producers to decide. That subtle inversion changed everything. Her strategy at 30 comes from a decade of unglamorous decisions. She prefers a small, lethal team over a sprawling entourage. The kind of people who return emails, reconcile statements, mark renewal dates, and defend boundaries without turning every boundary into a fight. She knows where money leaks and where it compounds, how a sloppy publishing deal can haunt a chorus for years, and why a clean catalog is a passport to freedom later. When brands call, she asks about the values behind the brief before she ever looks at the fee. And when an opportunity glitters without purpose, she lets it pass with the same calm she brings to a long note that does not need to be louder to be beautiful. Her calendar looks like craft, not chaos. Writing days are protected. Vocal rest is scheduled rather than wished for. Travel days are planned backwards from show demands, so energy lands where it matters. She does a weekly audit that asks what adds to the voice and what steals from it. And anything that steals does not survive the next week. The glamorous snapshots you see are rehearsed excellence, but the architecture beneath is carefully boring because boredom is the friend of mastery. The twist is simple yet surprising. The more deliberate she becomes, the more effortless she looks. And that is the first real clue to her lifestyle. If the blueprint begins with fewer yeses and better whys, what happens when she takes that focus on the road and tries to be global without becoming scattered? A global life that still feels local. Her passport fills fast, yet nothing about the travel feels performative. The map bends between Los Angeles and Manila, between festival stages in Cebu and writing rooms in Quezon City, between charity galas in New York and intimate showcases in London, where the microphone is close and the crowd listens like a choir. She learned early that going global is not about being everywhere. It is about returning somewhere often enough to matter. That is why she treats the Philippines not as a market but as a homecoming, a place where the set lists breathe in 2 languages and the encore feels like a family room that happens to have stage lights. The logistics are a form of love. Long-haul flights are buffered by generous windows for sleep and hydration. Her team tracks humidity and altitude because the voice is an instrument that hates surprises. Set lists shift with the language of the room, English giving way to Tagalog lines that land like a hug, riffs softened or sharpened depending on the hall, and arrangements rebuilt to fit the musicians on hand. She will rehearse with a Manila rhythm section in the afternoon, eat adobo with the band before sound check, and then walk on stage with a tone that sounds like home even when the venue is brand new. In another city, she will trade adobo for pho, swap a horn line for strings, and keep the heart of the show steady while the clothes change around it. Media days carry the same respect. Morning radio gets the laugh of an old friend. Long-form interviews that make space get the heavier stories. She insists on ending in time to sleep instead of performing wellness for the timeline. The pace stays busy but never frantic because frantic kills tone. She has learned to say no to red carpets that do not serve music, and yes to school visits that do, walking into classrooms with the same warmth she brings to green rooms. That is the pattern: fewer gestures, more presence. The twist most people miss is that the quiet habits that look small on paper are the ones that make a global career feel human. If being worldwide is about returning well, what does an ordinary day look like when the most important hours are the ones nobody sees? The studio where voice meets science. Most lifestyle videos skip the rooms that matter most, the ones where microphones turn breath into memory. Jessica's 30s are defined by those rooms. She arrives with a plan that reads like a score: keys that honor her tessitura, tempos that respect lyric clarity, and reference tracks that shape emotional color without erasing her fingerprint. Warm-ups come first. She slides straw phonation through a glass until the chords feel elastic, eases into gentle sirens, places consonants where resonance lives, and only then steps to the microphone. She treats the signal chain like a palette. If a condenser exaggerates sibilance, she swaps to a ribbon. If a preamp adds grit where a ballad needs bloom, she changes the chain. She will comp a chorus like an editor cuts film, chasing the phrase that carries truth rather than the note that chases applause. When a lyric lands flat, she pulls a pencil and rewrites the line because a stubborn vowel often hides a weak idea. Producers love working with her because she decides quickly when it matters and waits patiently when patience protects the song. Her discipline shows up in the notes she keeps. After each session, she writes what worked and what did not, which chain flattered the lower mix, which placement allowed a quiet high without strain, which whispered consonant turned a verse from pretty to intimate. Those notes save hours later and protect the voice over years. She treats silence like a fader, pulling the room down between takes until only the song remains. The studio is where she designs the life she will live on tour, and the technology does not distance her from soul. It brings her closer by letting honesty survive repeated takes. The twist inside that truth is that a careful comp can feel more human than a single perfect pass because it reveals nuance a crowd might miss in the moment. If this much intention shapes one track, what happens when she applies the same thought to money, opportunity, and the myth that success must look loud to be real, the business you never see? The loudest myth about stardom is that talent guarantees a life. The quiet reality is that systems do. Jessica built those systems with craftsperson patience. Masters remain in her company's name and are released through partners who scale reach without touching ownership. Publishing is administered rather than sold, which means that if a chorus becomes a classic, the writers still eat. Neighboring rights are registered country by country, so broadcast checks do not evaporate into administrative fog. She tracks ISRCS, PRO registrations and cue sheets with the same care a band tracks tempo, and because of that care, she sleeps. Budgeting looks like training. Production reserves are set aside before a tour is announced, so a video or a string session can be greenlit without panic. Tour deposits are paced so they do not collide with studio invoices. Taxes live in their own account because peace of mind is not optional. Insurance covers the voice as an instrument and the gear as a livelihood. Contracts are reviewed against a checklist that begins with values and ends with exit clauses, since the ability to leave is part of real consent. Meetings have agendas, agendas have outcomes, and outcomes walk back to the whiteboard where everything lives in one place. The digital side is treated as a stage, not a slot machine. Content is batched during quiet weeks, so release weeks can belong to performance. Captions do the work of storytelling rather than fishing for outrage. Live streams serve as intimate rehearsals, not confessional theater. Comments pass through a filter that protects mental health and time. Newsletters feel like postcards rather than blasts, and each platform earns its role instead of being fed out of fear. The twist is small but decisive. Serenity is an accounting choice as much as a spiritual one. Calm is what systems buy when they are built before the spotlight demands them. People expect the car to explain success. In her case, the cap table does. If numbers can buy silence and silence can buy clarity, what else can design buy when the calendar turns into a living organism instead of a trap? Health, ritual, and the myth of effortless. Her day looks less like a montage and more like a high-performance routine. Breath anchors everything. She cycles strength work with Pilates to stabilize ribs and hips because breath support begins where posture lives. Dairy stays low before heavy vocal days to avoid extra mucus. Meals favor steady energy rather than spikes, with familiar plates that travel well and taste like home. She carries a portable humidifier and a marked water bottle that turns hydration into a habit instead of a hope. Warm-ups protect the voice before a show. Warm-downs protect it after. Sleep is scheduled like a sound check, and anything that threatens those hours is an enemy to the work. Her rituals are practical, not precious. A short meditation or prayer opens the day so noise does not invade identity. A journal entry closes it so adrenaline leaves the room with the ink. On vocal rest days, she keeps a whiteboard nearby to avoid wasted whispers and lets texts wait until the chords feel ready. She sets boundaries around social media that honor the human before the headline, and therapy has a standing slot so anxiety never gets to run the calendar. This is not austerity, it is design. The discipline you cannot see is the reason the high note you can see lands night after night without borrowing tomorrow's voice. There is a twist inside the routine. The more closely she guards the ordinary hours, the more extraordinary the stage feels. That is the trade most people never make because it looks unglamorous from the outside. She has learned to love it. Each small choice protects the thing that feeds all the others. And because she guards that center, she can say yes to risks that would break a tired life. If health turns luxury into latitude and ritual turns chaos into rhythm, how does that freedom show up when she steps into the world beyond music? The quiet flex. Her wardrobe gets attention, but fashion for her is a form of storytelling rather than costume. On television, she learned that certain fabrics swallow a petite frame and some colors die under studio lights, so she builds around pieces that read on camera, travel without fuss, and move with breath. Tailored suits share the closet with fluid dresses. Statement earrings work with clean necklines to keep the voice unobstructed. Footwear respects choreography and floors. She favors craft over hype and works with stylists who understand that a performance outfit must phrase with the music. Offstage, her style softens into denim, knits, and calm sneakers, the kind of clothes that let a studio day slide into dinner without a costume change. Her home is a working residence, not a museum of trophies. The writing room holds a piano that actually gets played, a small vocal booth ready for late ideas, and shelves with marked notebooks that map years of thought. The kitchen is alive because music and cooking share a rhythm. The patio doubles as a tiny listening room for early mixes when friends drop by. There is a calendar on the fridge where birthdays and deadlines stand shoulder to shoulder. The point is not to perform domesticity for the camera, it is to build a space that can hold ambition without burning it. The quiet flex is how ordinary much of it looks on purpose. Morning coffee brewed at home. A run through a neighborhood park before the sun gets bossy. A grocery trip in a hoodie. An afternoon spent labeling stems and backing up sessions so a laptop mishap never erases months of work. Luxury shows up where it matters to the art. A better microphone that flatters a specific shade of vibrato. Acoustic treatment that makes a small room sing. A monitor upgrade that saves ears over years. The twist is that humility is not a pose. It is a strategy that keeps the art louder than the life. If the space and the look are calibrated to serve story rather than steal it, what happens when she turns that same calibration toward the people who keep her grounded? The long game. For all the airports and after-parties, her life is anchored by a circle that does not leak. Family meals are hours where she stops performing and begins listening, and those hours are protected like show calls. Friends are the ones who knew her before the spotlight, and still tease her for leaving mugs on the piano. Mentors are the artists and managers who have lasted decades and answer boring questions about taxes, catalog strategy, and estate planning. So future her never has to panic in present tense. Gratitude is not a caption, it is a practice lived off camera in messages, notes, and checks quietly written to causes that matter. Boundaries keep that circle healthy. She says no to formats that would shred vocal health, no to deals that mortgage ownership for an advance, and no to narratives that require drama to be interesting. The power of that no is what makes the yes meaningful. When a collaboration aligns, she shows up early, learns names, and remembers that relationships are compound interest. She mentors younger singers on royalties and rights because nobody did that for her at the start, and she knows that generosity is a form of self-respect. The long game reveals itself in small decisions that stack. She studies how vowels sit in different languages so resonance never collapses when a lyric shifts. She tracks how microphone choice changes the color of a note. She keeps a journal of studio experiments that reads like a lab notebook. She treats coaching as a permanent line item, not a crisis purchase. Every one of those habits lengthens the runway. The twist is gentle and profound. She has built a life that feels calm so the art can feel brave. And that is why 30 looks like the beginning of her peak rather than the end of her moment. If the circle is tight, the systems are solid, and the voice is protected. Where does this design lead next for an artist who intends to last? The voice people remember is supported by routines most fans never see. Sleep that arrives on schedule, hydration that travels with her passport, vocal rest that is treated like a contract, and studio sessions engineered around peak hours rather than convenience. She built a life where stamina is strategy, where the body is the first producer, and where every chorus is protected long before it is performed. Money, too, is treated like oxygen, not confetti. Revenue is diversified across masters, publishing splits, performance rights, syncs, residencies, and brand partnerships that respect veto power. Checks go to boring places first: taxes, insurance, emergency funds, rehearsal budgets, because security buys better art. The team is small, precise, and empowered to say no. The calendar is padded so the human can still outrun the schedule. Identity is curated without feeling manufactured. Wardrobe choices read like chapters rather than costumes. Homes double as workspaces where pianos sit tuned and microphones are within reach. Travel is relentless, rooted. Manila and Los Angeles share a heartbeat, and hometown shows stay on the map because community is a renewable resource. Mentorship is woven into tour days, not as a photo op, but as infrastructure. The scene gets stronger when knowledge compounds. Most of all, she treats virality as a visitor and craft as the address. Social media promotes, it does not pilot. Songs are built to survive a decade, not an hour. The result is a career that looks quiet from far away and undeniable up close, steady heat, lasting light. So the takeaway is simple and demanding. Elegance is engineered, longevity is planned, and nothing sustainable happens by accident. If you judge a future by its latest spike, you miss the architecture that keeps lights on. 30 is not an exclamation point, it is a fuse lit. When it burns brighter, the surprise won't be that she rose, but how the blueprint was visible all along. What quiet habit will you adopt this week to make your next chapter last for you now? You expected spectacle and she gave you systems. You expected drama and she gave you discipline. You expected a headline and she offered a body of work. At 30, Jessica Sanchez has engineered a lifestyle that looks effortless precisely because it is engineered. A mosaic of habits, boundaries, relationships, and risks that add up to durability in a business that devours potential. The twist is not a scandal, it is a strategy, and the transitional question now is yours. If this is what a sustainable, sovereign career looks like behind the curtain, what changes would you make to your own routines to let your next chapter sing? You can make your views known in the comment section. Also, you can like and share this video. Do well to subscribe to this channel. Before you go, click on the video displayed on your screen.